when we were looking for this featured speaker for the event. Well, I might very well be easier for me to list the things she has not yet accomplished. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome to the Visti stage, Wezi Tendwa.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? How you doing? We're good? It's so good to see you. Please join me in thanking our Visti committee, our hosts, for this amazing conference every time. It's such an honor to be able to join you in the largest city in Virginia. Do we have Virginia Beach educators in the house? Whoop, whoop. Shout out to our Virginia Beach educators. So today, exactly 1 month from today, marks my 23rd anniversary as a Virginia transplant. This African girl has a lot of Virginia in her. I graduated from Virginia schools, as you heard, and went on to teach in Virginia schools. Any other TUFAs in the house who graduated from Virginia schools? And also, yeah, okay, we've got a phenomenal education system in this state. And folks who I've met along the way often say, like, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I knew right away. And that really wasn't the case for me. It took a while for me to get there. I had a lot of really wonderful and called experiences that I felt were called experiences in childhood education, but I didn't quite start connecting the dots until the tipping point for me was my grandmother. So my grandmother, and let me make sure that my clicker is working here, that you can. Oh, I don't think I'm connected to the screen. Are we able to get? I'm clicking, but this screen isn't clicking. If we're only at if we're only at one tech glitch, I think we're good. Okay, so I'm changing here.
Yeah. Chris is on it. Keep going, Chris. Keep going.
Okay, I'll keep telling you this story, and then we'll let the slides. We'll let the technology keep up with us. How about that? So my grandmother. Her legacy is not insignificant. My grandmother called her Gogo in my language in Malawi, Chichewa. She's a Gogo. And she passed a couple of years ago at age 103. Yeah. I don't know if I want to get that far along, but she's quite a dynamo in our family. And what she did was decide to opened the very first, thank you, thanks, Chris. She opened the first bilingual preschool that was available to Native children in Malawi. And it was during a time when early childhood education that was bilingual was exclusive to folks with means, children of expats, and so on and so forth. And so she wanted to expand that accessibility. And she named the school Kwelani. And Kwelani has kind of it's a multiple meaning name. It means come on board, it means rise on up, Kwelani. And it is both welcoming and relational, and also a call to action in this word. And that's exactly what my grandmother did. And so the summer that she was really inspiring me. By the way, I used to go to the preschool with her as a toddler. I'd sit with her in her truck and would go to school together. And those were my earliest school memories. And one summer when I was visiting as a teen, she said to me, Wezi, do you know, this is how I built English for my students. This is one of the ways that I did that. And she told me that every single day when the students would arrive to school, she would ask each and every one of them, she would lean in and ask them, when you came to school today, what did you see? Very simple question. When you came to school today, what did you see? And the students at the beginning of the year, they'd start off, I saw a man, I saw a car, I saw a boy. And by the end of the year, we come from an oral storytelling tradition, they're telling stories about their journey to school, right? Was it a mother, a child, sister, daughter? Who was in the car? Was it a blue car? Was it a red car? And so the important part of this question, very simple question, and the message that my grandmother was intentionally communicating to the students, you can see this, the play microphone there, was that your perspective matters. What you see and what you bring to this learning experience is of value. And we need to use that in order to build you up with the skills. And at the time, learning English in Malawi was a skill for upward social mobility. And the calling for educators remains the same, that in order for us to provide learning experiences for our students, to get them to be able to have that mobility in society, that we are charged with creating experiences that are not only relevant, but they're also relational. That's how we get students to perform and achieve at high levels. We don't just dive straight into rigor. We let them know that what they bring to the table, what they see, what they experience, what they feel, all matters. And while my grandmother's context was slightly different, we know that this future readiness is increasingly digital, that the context and the mediator for learning is the digital landscape. And so that relational and that relevance has to exist in this socio-digital world that we are preparing and that we are preparing our students to succeed in. And so we define the skills needed to do that in several different ways. And we use this term a lot, digital literacy. There's a lot of definitions out there for digital literacies. And so what I like to focus on is that at the core, digital literacies are amplifying skills, right? They take your cognitive skills and they make them functional. They take the essential skills and they make them into something that our students can navigate broadly, consciously and constructively. And so we see this transition over time, even throughout our ISTE standards and from where they started, right? We started with learning to use technology and then using technology to learn. And now we're in a very transformational place with technology, that the relevance and the relational aspects have to be transformational. And when we talk about them being the amplifier skills, having digital literacies amplify the need for social skills. That I can have very well developed social skills and not have civic skills. Civic skills are amplified social skills. They allow us to exist in a larger socio-digital context. And that's the importance of what we know of these ISTE standards. And if we really take a look at them, like from the historical researchers in the past, Dr. Doug Belshaw, you might be familiar with the 8 literacies as he was trying to really define what our digital literacy is. If we take a close look, most of these are inherently both relational and relevant. We cannot ignore that relational piece. Now, why do these distinctions matter? Well, you don't have to look far to see that our current social context is very intense. We are coexisting in a time of immense social tensions, of fractured politics, raging war, pandemics. It is really, really tough to navigate our current landscape, which I argue makes it unavoidable that we emphasize these socio-digital skills. And in a recent workshop I was doing with teachers, we asked them to create book covers to define what it means to teach in the pandemic. So shout out to our Northern Virginia teachers who worked on this, because I'm going to show you off. I see you. I'm going to show you off. So they made these book covers, and this was actually quite cathartic. We were naming what it's like to teach in the pandemic and putting them in a book cover. And so take a look at some of the titles that teachers came up with. So we have, which kids am I teaching? I don't even know at this point. Graded, turn your mic on. Creating deep understanding, beep or no bleep. I survived. It's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. I like that one. I made it out being an ITC during the pandemic. Is there any of you in here? I love the no, David. No, David, I'm teaching right now. How about that one? So we've got, that resonates, right? That hits a little close. We know that this is just not an easy time. And while we were able to build community in that experience, the reality is we are stressed out. Teachers are stressed out. And what happens to our brains with extended periods of exposure to environmental stress is this: our cortisol levels shoot up, and it attacks among other things, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our capacity to attend, to plan, to organize, to think flexibly, to regulate our impulses, essentially what we need to be teachers preparing students for future readiness, right? And so it then begs the question of how are we showing up imperfectly and still being able to do all the things that we're asked to do? We're really focused on creativity that sits at the top of the blooms for a reason. But if I am operating subconsciously or consciously out of a stress response, then really I'm going to be doing more covering than connecting. And what we are asked to do and support our teachers on the front lines, all of these things. And then let's throw in some frameworks, right? What we're asking is to perform at our highest capacity. And it's really hard to do that when we are engulfed in these immense social pressures. We are in a socio-digital age that is putting a lot of tension on us. And so it begs the question, how can we have a default response where we are showing up in our imperfection and we are preparing students for the future anyway? What do we need to do, if we will, our factory settings, that we can make sure that we are building our factory settings so that we are still equipping students with what they need? Because some of you have come here today on the heels of the hardest year of your life, and you are here anyway. We show up imperfectly and we do what we need to do, and we don't want to ignore those stresses that exist. So how can we continue to perform optimally despite our social conditions? So I'm going to talk us through four ways that we can do this. You with me? And you know all of them. Spoiler alert. The first one, very predictable, is purpose. Just before I got up here, I was talking to an ed tech professional who I admire very much, JB. Where are you, JB? Are you in the house? I know he's been running around. Hey, JB. And he was actually just sharing with me the importance of purpose and feeling connected to what you're doing, how much that drives us. And so in order for us to ensure that we are defaulting to preparing students for future readiness, we want to have a strong sense of why are we teaching what we're teaching? Why are we doing what we're doing? Anyone following the World Cup? No, lies, you were just watching the game. Go France. Who do you have, by the way, for the World Cup? Anyone? Oh, okay. I'm not sure, but Argentina, they're a little messy. That was what? I'm really proud of that joke. I'm really proud of that joke. Okay, so I say the World Cup because I'm actually going to use Cristiano Ronaldo as an example. He hasn't been at the top of his game this World Cup, but he's known as one of the world's most elite players. And a couple of years ago, I was watching, this was a couple of years ago because now I just seem to watch everything on streaming, but this was actually on TV. And I was watching this show on the science of elite athletes. And they did a profile on Cristiano Ronaldo, and I was completely glued to it. So what they did is they said, how is it that Cristiano Ronaldo is able to do the things that he's able to do? Like, what is it about him that makes him perform at such elite levels? And so they give him an experiment. I'm just going to actually play for you what the experiment was, but essentially they're asking him to see if he can perform in incredibly high and highly intense situations and still perform at an elite level. Okay, so let's watch the first clip.
He is effectively a scholar of football. It's the same way as studying any other subject, learning a new language, anything like that. You build up experience, you learn basic rules of grammar in the different words that are available to you. So in football terms, that's going to be the skills, then putting them into a match situation. And so as you become more fluent in the language, you don't need to think about it as much.
So Ronaldo's vast experience gives him the ability to intuitively read the game under normal conditions. But what if the conditions are very far from normal? Can Ronaldo still hit the back of the net if all the lights are turned off and he's in complete darkness?
Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to have Andy feeding the balls in as if it's a cross. And then sometime in the ball flight, the lights are going to go black. So you won't be able to see anything at all. We're expecting you to be able to put the ball in the goal. That's what we're hoping will happen. We're hoping that you'll have picked up some advanced cues from Andy's body position, the shapes, the positioning of his feet and his hips, and therefore we'll be able to tell exactly where the ball's going to go and get yourself in the right position, even though you can't see it.
Okay.
Taking Ronaldo.
I love how it's just like, okay. All right, so what do we think is going to happen? They're going to turn the lights off. Do you think, raise your hand if you think he's going to score in the dark. Well, this is an optimistic crew. Okay. All right, let's see. So as a control, they got a guy named Ronald, who's an amateur footballer, to do the same thing. Okay, so let's see how Ronald does first.
Ronald misses the ball by quite a way. Perhaps not that surprising. But can Ronaldo do any better?
I hope to do once.
Dark, light.
Hey, that's one straight in the bag.
The night vision replay shows how differently Ronaldo performs. To confirm that wasn't just luck, another attempt.
Dark, light.
Love that. Be careful.
And the replay?
How hard is that? It's difficult because it's...
Okay, that's incredible. How does he possibly do that? So you all were right. You were optimistic, and you were right. He scores. Ronald, on the other hand, poor soul. So Ronaldo is able to instinctively respond to an unpredictable situation. So what is actually happening here? And he did it twice, pretty easily. So let's hear the scientist's explanation for what's going on.
Human reaction time is about 200 milliseconds, and by 500 milliseconds, Ronaldo's subconscious has interpreted Andy's body language, worked out which direction the ball will go in, calculated its speed and trajectory, and then programmed his body to reach it at the optimum moment.
Stop that.
It's almost as if they're doing maths in their head, even though they wouldn't be able to describe it to you. You could see from their performance that Ronaldo saw the first part of the ball flight information. He picked up information from Andy kicking the ball and was able to move his body into the correct position. This is because he's processed the information. He has experience of where the ball is likely to go. He's able to analyze all that as it's coming towards him and therefore connect successfully with the ball.
Stop that.
Ronald, on the other hand, doesn't have the same level of experience. He would have watched the ball flight. It's likely that he will just have had his eyes on the ball instead of picking up any information from Andy himself. And then when the lights go down and it's black, he's kind of stranded in no man's land a little bit and just has to do his best to react, but his natural.
So what's interesting to me about this, other than Ronald being pretty lost, is that Ronald actually kept his eyes on the ball, which is why he missed it. Did you catch that? So they said that Ronaldo was able to read the cues from the person passing the ball, and Ronald focused on the ball. So they decided to then take this up one more notch. I've got one more video of this for you. And they said, let's increase the stakes here. Let's actually turn the lights off before Andy kicks the ball to Ronaldo, so he doesn't have any input. Now, raise your hand if you think he's going to score this time. Okay, that's gone down significantly. Let's see what happens.
We good?
Yeah, good.
Okay, Ronaldo.
Dark. Light.
Like, Ronaldo, quality. What was that, shoulder? Great finish, great finish. That was a great finish.
This is great because I imagine the ball is coming. I scared to go with the face, so I'll go with half chest, half shoulder, and then put.
He even was intentional about it. He was like, I didn't want to touch my gorgeous face on the ball. So I used my shoulder to do it. What? So I use this example of Ronaldo for adaptive skills, because the reason why Ronaldo is elite is because he's put years and years and years into his muscle memory to be able to respond in the most unpredictable situations with very little information and still hit the target. Understanding that when we are standing in front of students, even when it can feel like we are tired and we're exhausted and we're supporting each other in doing that, that the goal is for us to build adaptive skills. That the work can seem rote and regimented, but we are building flexible muscles. That's our purpose, so that we can respond when we have global disaster, when we have to shut down schools, and when we have to invoke all kinds of social welfare programs, that we are able to adapt and be better off for it. So one of the reasons why Ronaldo is actually one of my favorite players. Okay, does anyone recognize this photo? Yeah, I see some head nods. How about now? You recognize this person? Giving you more clues here. This is William Kamkwamba. William is actually from Malawi, my country. William is known as the boy who harnessed the wind. And William's show of adaptive skills was such that in order to provide electricity for his community, he used the scraps in his neighborhood to create a windmill and generate what he needed in order to continue his studies and for his community to be fed. And whether our adaptive skills come from interest and passion, like Ronaldo, right? He's interested and passionate in soccer, so he plays at it, or necessity, like William. They are our why. Building these skills are our why, and we see time and time again exemplars of this. Now, another thing that we see are images, and this is, our classrooms are these microcosms of society's expectations. And even today, whenever you like search classroom, or even when we watch on TV, it's a very generic picture of the purpose of the teacher in the classroom, the role of the teacher in the classroom. It's still very much the sage on the stage. Shout out to Abbott Elementary, by the way, that's a great show. And, you know, the students are raising their hands and they all look very well behaved and they're sitting in a certain position. Even today, you type in modern classroom and this is what comes up. And we know that this is not every day, or even the practices that we have been working so hard to evolve. But these bit by bit messages actually mean something. Because what happens is that we internalize these messages, and when we are in stress response time, whether it's SOLs are coming up, report cards, I have a walkthrough, I've got an evaluation coming, it's very easy to defer to, I am the one giving the information, and it's back to this model. And I remember feeling that way in the classroom too. It's crunch time. I don't have time for creating. I don't have time for interacting. So we need to make those default practices in order to develop that future readiness. And it's really important to acknowledge what we have internalized about our purpose and our function of the relationship between the teacher and the student. Like, this is a paradigm shift that needs to be acknowledged. Everyone fold your hands for a second. Go ahead and fold your arms. Bear with me, fold your arms. Now fold them the other way. That's uncomfortable, right? That's the paradigm shift. Society has told us we are the ones who hold all the source of truth in the classroom. And so if students learn, it's only coming from you. It's not a distributed, shared experience. And so to switch that, however we switch that, it's uncomfortable. So when we are in a heightened sense of stress, what are we going to default to? We're going to default to what we've internalized. So it's very important for us to go back to the purpose and hold firm in our purpose as educators. Why are we teaching these adaptive skills? And who are we in the classroom? So that's the first thing, that's purpose. The second thing is perspective. Preparing our students for future readiness, even when we are in our default factory settings, is perspective. Have any of you seen this optical illusion before? Okay, wave to me if you see angels. Okay, we've got about, looks like about 30%. Wave to me if you see bats. Okay, let me tell you something. There are no bats here, so I don't know what you all are thinking. No, I'm just kidding. Wave to me if you see devils. Yeah. So now try to see the other things. If you saw bats, try to see angels. Try to switch it. Is it? That's how our perspective works, right? That we have things that are right in front of us. I see you all pointing like, where is the angel? It's there. But we have to tell ourselves to see it. So when I was a first-year teacher, I was really excited. We were opening a brand new school, and my principal sent out a memo and sent us a copy of this book. And I really cherish that she gave us this. It's by Mark Sanborn. You don't need a title to be a leader. And it was really empowering us to be leaders, regardless of where we were in that school, and just recognizing each of our value as members of that new school community. And one thing that Sanborn talks about in this book is this idea of the change makers of the world are the ones that see obligations and choose to see opportunities. And in our obligations, the day-to-day, what we have to show up and do, that there are opportunities there. And that was always really powerful to me, that shifting our perspective can allow us, even when we're not feeling at our best, to still approach things with it, I get to do this. And that shifts behaviors. It has a huge impact and implication for behaviors. I took this picture of a group of students I was working with at the high school. This was February 2020. Remember that time. And the students, I just shown them how to do some video editing, and I love what the teacher did. She approached me and she said, can we collaborate on this? Because the dual enrollment students, they have to talk about a passion project, and I want to give them the skills to do it in a video editing, in a video tool. So I said, sure. So we came and we worked with the students, and what they came up with was so incredible, that looking at this obligation and saying, how can we take this opportunity and make it something that can enrich our students beyond what it is that we've just written out for them to do? And these students came up with a video on third parenting. And when things shut down, this was really informative to teachers to say, wow, that's what's going on in the homes, and this is what we need to be mindful of as we are outlining hyperdocs, and we are establishing practices that are integrating home and school more intimately than ever before. And I was walking down the hallway of my school, shout out to Parkview High School, it's an amazing school in Sterling, Virginia. And I took this picture on my phone. It was not the best, I didn't take the best pictures. And I was just so impressed by our students. There were several students in the cafeteria wearing these light blue shirts that said, you can sit with me. If you don't have anyone to sit with, if you see me in a light blue shirt, you can sit with me. Isn't that amazing? And this project was actually born from this young lady, Natalie Hampton, from Sherman Oaks, California. And Natalie was bullied. And she decided to take the opportunity to create an app called Sit With Us, where students who are feeling alone and overwhelmed, isolated, can connect with others and find community. The perspective shift that can really help us prepare students for future readiness is seeing technology as a social good. That's the perspective shift. That's an opportunity and an obligation. Third thing is people. The social good needs people. Social scientists define social capital as the bonds in our social networks that enable society to function optimally. And we know this to be true in education because we have professional learning communities. We know that there's power in our social bonds, in us as a people. Dr. Bruce Perry said this, the best predictor of your current functioning is your current connection. And what he goes on to say is that when you receive messages from others that signal emotionally, psychologically that you belong, it actually reduces the likelihood of maladaptive behaviors. That belonging has huge physiological implications. So here's an example of that belonging, that relationship and the relevance in instruction. And it's with one of my favorite researchers, Dr. Linda Darling Hammond.
Essential needs we have is the need to belong. In school, children need a sense of belonging to be able to be productive learners. They need to be connected to their fellow students, connected to their teachers, to also be affirmed in who they are in a way that is positive and accepting.
I don't take swimming lessons.
In a belonging classroom, there's a community being explicitly built. The teacher knows each child and things about each of those children that they can mention and draw on.
I pay attention, I listen. I'm really invested in what they tell me. The students feeling loved, students feeling nurtured, students feeling like they have a place at school, they're safe. It activates their brain cells. What's that with you?
Sense of belonging is one of the most important activators of a child's engagement in learning. Everything about activating a child's cognitive skills begins with activating their social connectedness. The energy for learning is coming from the social connection that children have.
But in the end, we're trying to come up with an agreement.
Excellent.
We're not going to comment, question. We're only going to encourage.
The energy from learning is coming from the social connection. So we want our students to show up and perform at high levels. We have to focus on the relational, the people. So what's an ed presentation without a Hattie stat? We know this to be true with the collective teacher efficacy, right? The shared belief by a group of teachers that we have the capacity to fundamentally have a positive outcome on student achievement. That when that efficacy is there, literally the impact size on student outcomes is off the charts. So we want to default to preparing our students for future readiness. Focus on the people, focus on our humanity, on the relational. This is Dr. Sasina Haile. She is responsible for dozens of patents in material sciences. And she had this to say: I had to learn that quiet persistence only got you so far. Success required focusing on the most important problems in my field, finding the right questions to ask, and convincing the world with just a bit of fanfare that I could solve those problems. That her capacity to impact science, and by the way, some of her patents are absolutely incredible. She has really advanced fuel efficiency for the work of farmers in biotech. And she realized that she needed that social dimension, that there was a relational piece there that needed to be had in order for her impact to be felt around the world. And as teachers and teacher communities, we look for community, whether online or offline, we look for it, right? This picture at the bottom here was during distance learning, and our art teacher, she decided to create space for our staff to create neurographic drawings. And it was just let's write something that's stressing us out, and let's create these drawings on the other side and have a positive association with them. And the term Ubuntu means I am because we are. That when we are experiencing heightened tensions, that leaning on each other helps us to evolve and perform. Isolation can chip away at our empathy. Going back to how social scientists define social capital, there's so much power in our social bonds, and history has taught us that. That even while in quarantine or experiencing isolation like never before, we could see acts of injustice and say, you know what, that's not us. That's not who we are. And we will show up. And time again, this is how the human experience has overcome the dark times. Is the people factor, our social bonds. Maria Ressa, in a recent interview with NPR, said, the data shows it, inspiration spreads just as fast as anger. So while we are weighing down in the digital landscape and seeing all that negativity, remember that leaning on each other and that inspiration has such such huge implications for the work that we can do to make the space better and prepare our students for it. And the fourth and final point in defaulting to future readiness for our students is pain. We can't ignore pain. These statistics are probably very familiar to you. They are probably weighing on you that K-12 teacher burnout is at an all-time high compared to other industries. This is a February Gallup poll that was taken. And the World Health Organization defines burnout as stresses from workplace experience that, when mismanaged or not managed at all, cause these things. Again, how can we prepare our students for future readiness when we are operating at a lower capacity? And we do that not by shying away from the pain, but by actually leaning into it. And I call this the firewood effect. My mother, in her infinite African mom wisdom, she's actually here. Hi, Mom. You remember you told me this? You said, us teachers, we are like firewood. When you have one piece of firewood, it's very quick to burn out. But when you put them together, it's really hard to burn out. And on top of that, that light is really bright. And teachers leaning on each other, that collective efficacy and that acknowledgement of pain is actually healing. This is what can actually turn what we see as obligation not only into opportunity, but into joy. Joy can feel like something that's just kind of like, it's just like the glitter, the optional glitter that we sparkle. But it can be really hard to think of joy and obligation occupying the same space in our classrooms. But it can, and it's actually the wisdom traditions of the world. They might disagree on a lot of things, but they agree on this, that joy is intrinsic, which is different from happiness, right? Joy is curated intrinsically. So it's in spite of our pain that we can curate joy. It also relieves tension and stress. Joy is healing. And Susan Cain, in her beautiful book called Bittersweet, she says that we know joy because we know suffering. Our pain is actually an important part of experiencing joy. Anyone know what this fruit is? Does it look familiar to you? I didn't know either. I took this picture I was in Haiti a couple of years ago, and I was so glued to this tree, and I was like, what is this fruit? And one of the gentlemen I was working with, he said, I only know the Haitian Creole name for it. I don't know the name in English, so I'll show you. So he grabs the fruit, and then he smashes it on the concrete, and it didn't open. And he's a big guy. And then he smashes it again, and it didn't open. Big guy. Then his friend comes over and hands him a brick. And he gets this brick, and he smashes it, and the outer shell cracks open. But then there was another shell inside. And I was like, what is this fruit? He gets the piece of concrete again, smashes it, or the brick, smashes it, breaks the other shell. There's another shell. Cracks it and cracks it and cracks it, opens it again, and it was an almond. It's an almond. And I was like, that's why they're so freaking expensive. I never knew. And it's one of those things where we ascribe value once we know what something is worth. The pain it bears, the struggle to get that thing holds value. Do you know what one of the US's greatest exports is, or top exports? Any ideas, top exports? We have many. We have many. Tobacco is one. Corn, yeah. Potatoes, I hear. Take it what, pharmaceuticals is actually. And jazz music. Jazz music. So I took this photo in New Orleans in 2019, and it was a band of young guys, and they were playing Grazing in the Grass, a song by South African jazz artist Hugh Masekela, one of my favorite songs. And they were playing it in what's come to be known as the birthplace of jazz music. New Orleans was the port city where formerly enslaved people, it was the only place where they were allowed to own drums. And so jazz was an expression of their newly found freedom. Jazz music has been studied over and over again, and it has been found to have healing effects on people. That it is the #1 genre to relieve tension and stress. And the interesting thing about jazz music is that you don't have jazz without the blues. That jazz was born out of the pain of people in bondage. And I've always found it so beautiful and so interesting, this connection between the most creative parts of our human experience to pain and joy. And in this quote, creativity has the power to look pain in the eye and decide to turn it into something better. Don't ignore the pain. It's part of how we create at high levels, how we perform at high levels. So when you show up imperfectly, know that your pain is part of a beautiful story. I love this question that Dr. Zaretta Hammond asked. She says, where's the dopamine hit in your classroom? The dopamine is that neurotransmitter that our body creates and that our brain says, hey, this is something really rewarding because it came from a challenging experience. Our students need that. Our students need productive struggle to feel that dopamine hit and to say, I want to do that again and again and again and again. There's value in struggle. Our students are telling, Gen Z is telling us this, the importance of achieving at that high level, that top of, I like to say top of the blooms to you when I talk about creativity. 89% of students believe creativity is going to play an integral role in solving today's global challenges. I was talking to a teammate of mine who was working with 6th graders at a school in upstate New York, and they had focused on passion projects this past year. And so some students were sharing, actually they had now 7th graders sharing their passion projects in their as part of their digital curriculum. And one student gets up there and he talks about, he said, well, I love biking and I think it's important to be healthy. And I also love being on my computer. So I designed a bike pedal to be under your desk that generates the power to charge your computer. 6th grade. And giving students the space to be that relational and that relevant, to reach and to be creative at those high levels. There's no limit to what they can show us. Do I have anyone in the audience who has a theater background? Who's willing to read this slide? Are you willing to read this slide for us? Read this quote for us? Thank you. Start with where you are. Do what you can. You will be surprised. That's it. Yeah, thank you. I love the theater. Is just it is different. Bishop Desmond Tutu is known as the Joy Man, and he was also a key player in the post-apartheid movement from South Africa. Somebody who experienced and witnessed some of the darkest points in our history is known as a person of joy, about joy. So I like to call this the Gwalani effect. In order for preparing our students for future readiness, really being able to give students the space to connect, be who they are, have that sense of belonging, the relational with the relevance, through a strong anchoring in our purpose. Who are we as educators? Why are we teaching these adaptive skills? What perspective shifts can we make to see the opportunities in the obligations, to see technology for social good? How can we lean on each other, knowing that the bonds, the social capital in our bonding power to make immense impact? And not ignoring our pain, but knowing that joy and creativity can come as a result of it. That's the charge for us, to Gwalani, to rise. Thank you all so much for this time. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
I would ask you once again to express your thanks to Ezzy